What is going on, people? It is Uncle Nick here, and I'm coming at you guys with the answers to the Q&A. What is going on, guys? It is Uncle Nick here, and before we get started this Q&A, I did want to remind you guys that you can still go on the Loyal brand and purchase the Embrace the Suck shirts if you haven't already. Make sure you use the code UncleNickSaves to save 15% on your order when you check out. Save money's good, right? Everybody wants to save money. But that code is still available for you to use, so when you do go to theloyalbrand.com, they have the gray tank tops, the green t-shirts. Make sure you grab one of each, because I don't know how long they'll last. They've been selling pretty crazy, so I really appreciate you guys that have supported that and gotten behind that Embrace the Suck movement. It means a lot to me. It is a phrase that I carry near and dear to me for a number of years now, and I'm beyond humbled to see all these people getting behind it. So thank you guys for making it all possible. But without further ado, let's get into the Q&A. Now, there was only a handful of questions asked, but that is okay because there are a few that actually require me to go into a little bit of depth to give you guys an actual answer on those. So we'll kick this off by rolling right into the first question, and that question comes from Radoslav Mihov. I'm apologizing in advance for name butchering. Sorry. We're just gonna go with Rad. How about that, Rad? Rad. How to get through the dead zone on an overhead press. Now, I mentioned that in the last video I put out, and that is a great question. There are a few things that I've done in the past that are my go-to when I have a sticking point on my overhead press. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is pin presses. And what you're gonna do is set those pins at your sticking point in some sort of rack, whether it's on the J-hooks, and you press right out of the hooks, or you set parallel pins to the ground at that height where the bar is, where your sticking point is. Say about forehead, for example, you set the pins and the bar at that height and you press from a dead stop at that point. And that is going to enforce generating power from that dead point. Another variation that you can do is banded overhead press. So you can attach bands to squat arms, pins, whatever it may be, even dumbbells. As long as the dumbbells outweigh the band tension, you will be fine. And the third and final option I'm going to give you is a Z press. You guys have heard me talk about the Z press countless times, but that is because that is a great way to improve your strict press all the way around. Start, stop, midway through. Your Z press needs to be incorporated in some sort of assistance or even the main strength work. But give those a try, either the pin presses at your stagnant stopping point. You can even couple up bands with those pin presses, banded overhead press, or Z press. So Rad, give those a try, man. Hope those work for you. Thanks for asking a great question. Second question comes from Greg McCandles. He asks, how does he increase shoulder mobility? That is a day-to-day thing. There's not one thing that you can do that's gonna increase your shoulder mobility, because that is basically recovery. There are stretches, all kinds of different things you need to be working, but I like to do internal and external rotation. So what I call an internal rotation is where you have your elbow at a 90 degree and you take anything from 2.5, no heavier than 10 pounds, and you rotate down. Then rotate back up, rotate down. You do those nice and slow, nice and controlled. And another thing I'll do is external rotations. You have your elbow in that same 90-degree angle, and you keep your elbow stationary, rotate out, rotate in, rotate out, rotate in. Not only will that generate you some mobility, but it will exercise those small joints, tendons, and ligaments inside that shoulder that you don't normally hit with a normal press or shoulder workout. Another thing I like to do before and after I lift is I take bands and I stand on them. What I do is I extend that band over my head, I let that band tension pull my arms back, get that nice shoulder stretch, and then I'll do the same thing outwards. Stretch all that out, and then once I get to the end of that stretch outwards, I let it stretch me back. So I stretch those front delts, those pecs, everything. All that stuff ties in an accumulation over time. That is the condensed version of the stuff I normally do to generate that shoulder mobility. But like I said, it's not something you can just do once. It's like recovery. You have to do it religiously, and over time, that is how you see the benefits. I'm trying. Asks a very similar question. How do you prevent shoulders from becoming tight over time, long term? Now, it is going to be the same thing. It is routine stretching, routine maintenance, because as soon as you let off, things start to tighten up over a period of time. So long-term things usually come from a day in, day out, putting your brick in the wall and building upon that mobility, building upon that stretching, all that stuff. Whether it's your legs, your shoulders, it's the same concept across the board. I get most of my stretching in right before I go to bed. I lay down on the floor, say turn on a podcast or something on Netflix, and I just start rolling out from my feet all the way up to my head. I get everything. Now, it takes up about 45 minutes to an hour, but there could be worse things you do with that 45 minutes to an hour rather than take care of your body. Long term, get some sort of routine set in place that allows you to stretch and roll out and start doing mobility stuff in your downtime, and that will carry over to that long-term goal of keeping that mobility. Thank you for the questions, Greg and Jaji. They were kind of cut from the same cloth as far as the actual question is concerned, but I hope I answered those for you. Anthony Haga, I think, says, my overhead press is stuck at 205. Could it be because my bench is 275 pounds? Now that is extremely vague and extremely general and kind of hard for me to answer, because I have no clue what your bench looks like. I have no clue what your overhead looks like. There's probably certain cues that you aren't doing or some things you aren't doing correctly to get the most efficiency out of the input to power. But to ask me by giving me a number doesn't give me much to go off, man. The best thing I can tell you is record both lifts. Study it, see what you're doing, see what you can fix, see what you're doing good, see what you're doing right, see what you're doing bad. All the above. Analyze your lift, go back to the drawing board and figure out how to improve that. Figure out what cues will work for you. But that is about the best advice I can give you based off of that question, man, because I can't do anything by just being given numbers. So I hope that helps, but thank you for the question anyway. And on to the last question. Simon West asks, what shoes do you wear? I like your directness. That is an easy question for me to answer. So when I train, there are two types of shoes I wear. 3, if you count barefoot. I typically go barefoot on deadlift days, and if I'm allowed in the competition as well on a static lift like a deadlift, I'm more comfortable, it is more stable for me, and I prefer barefoot over any shoe when it comes to a deadlift. But anything moving, anything carrying, just about most of my squats except a standard back squat with a typical barbell, I'm using a flat shoe. I use New Balance Minimuses. I've been using New Balance Minimuses for a very long time now. All the way back to my military days, I did all my PT stuff in New Balance Minimuses. Now they've kind of changed over time. They actually just came out with a newer version of these. So these are like the 2nd or 3rd generation. It's kind of like, shoes are kind of like new cars. Every year they come out with a newer model. But they typically keep the same design, as in having a thin but hard sole to give you that barefoot. There's no sponge effect like you'll get with Nike shoes, those Nike free shoes with the mesh and stuff. And the biggest thing for me about these is they cut them really wide. Due to me having an extremely wide foot, shoes are a finicky thing, so I stick to what fits and what's comfortable, and that is definitely the New Balance Minimuses. Now, for things like my overhead and back squat and stuff of that nature, I have Innovate Fast Lifts. That is a lifter. It is another brand, Innovate, that is big in the running game, rock climbing, outdoor stuff, sports. These aren't really as common, but they're extremely light, and they are another shoe that is cut wide for my caveman of a foot. Innovate Fast Lifts, they're stable, it is a lifter, and it is something I definitely recommend you try, but those are the shoes I wear. Simon West, I hope that helps you, my man. I appreciate the question. I appreciate that being very direct. That made it very easy for me to answer. But that is about it for the Q&A this time. I'm gonna try and do these once a month to try and answer whatever questions you guys may have that I'm not able to answer through other videos and in the comment section. So thank you guys for the questions, and thanks again for ordering. For those of you that have ordered shirts or going to order shirts, I do appreciate it. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Every time I put out a video, it means a lot. But that is about all I got for you guys on this one. And until the next time, you know what the deal is. Get out there, get after it, and embrace the suck.